Welcome to Maximizing Part 107 Waivers for Drone Program Implementation. We're glad you joined us today. My name is Grant Guillot, and I am an attorney, a partner, and the leader of the Unmanned Aircraft Systems practice team at the law firm of Adams and Reese. I am joined today by Brendan Stewart, who is the training director at DroneUp, by Brandon Packman, who is the head of business development at SkyWatch.AI, and by Trent Nichols, who is the Vice President, National BIM Director at J.E. Dunn Construction. Thrilled to have these guys with me today. There's a lot going on in the drone industry right now with regulatory advancements and waiver issues. Of course, for the past 2 years, we've always had waiver issues, but there's some pretty substantial and significant regulatory movements that we're expecting at the end of the year that could shake things up. But as things stand today, obtaining and maintaining and maximizing a Part 107 waiver is more critical than ever in order to scale a drone program. Among some of the topics we will discuss today include, when you implement a successful drone program, what documentation is needed, how do you go about training employees and drone pilots and making sure everyone is effectively and safely operating? How do you go about managing the program, and how do you maximize the use of those Part 107 waivers and mitigate risk, especially with Part 107.29 daylight waivers, which allows drone pilots to operate at night, and Part 107.39 waivers, which is the operation of drones over people. Both of these waivers are critical for making operations scalable. So without further ado, before I go any further, I would like to let our audience know they are able to submit questions throughout the duration of the program. We will be reading the questions and responding to them at the end of the program. We'll lead the tail end of the program for a Q&A session. So without further ado, we are going to move right into it, and I'm going to pose the first question to our panel. So the first question I have for is, many steps go into the implementation and management of a successful drone program, including documentation requirements and training matters. So I'm going to ask each panelist, what advice do you have for companies who are interested in possibly implementing a drone program, but who don't know where to start? Because it can seem daunting if you've never done it before. I'm going to start with Brendan Stewart. Again, Brendan is the training director at DroneUp. Brendan, welcome to the program, and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Grant. Excited to be here on the webinar and talk about what it takes to get a drone program going and really maximize the utility of your waivers and the utility of your drone program by getting beyond some of the regulatory limitations that we have with the stock Part 107 rules. So just for a little bit of context, my background, I've been flying drones for about 10 years in one capacity or another. I'm a manned pilot as well, so I started flying way back in 2012, 2014 timeline when Section 333 was still going on. And Section 333 makes this waiver process look like a cakewalk. There was a lot of paperwork we used to do in the bad old days. So we're making progress. And like you said, Grant, these waivers aren't going to be here forever, but this is our method to get up and flying right now and to get doing the operations that we need to be doing. So the advice that I have when you're starting a drone program, the first thing that anybody really needs to do, whether you have a construction program in the construction business, infrastructure inspections, wherever you might be, is sit down and have a clear understanding of your needs before you move forward. Do a needs assessment. Ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish operationally? All right. And from those things I'm trying to accomplish operationally, what's the business case? Am I trying to eliminate rework on a construction site? Am I trying to improve the speed and efficiency of inspecting infrastructure? Or am I replacing traditional manual processes with drones? What's the return on investment with those? From that, then determine for your drone program what your needs and what your wants are. And that's a big thing to differentiate against. I have a lot of folks that come to me and say, Brendan, I need you to develop waivers for everything under the sun. I need to fly over people. I need to fly at night. I need to fly beyond line of sight. I need to fly over moving vehicles, right? I need to fly over 400 feet. But when you sit down and you look at what the objectives of the program are, what they're actually trying to achieve, they really don't need all the things that they're asking for. And the things that they're asking for, while we could achieve them, probably aren't going to provide the utility that they need for their drone program. So step number one is to perform that needs assessment and determine what is it I'm trying to accomplish, what steps do I absolutely need to implement to get there, and then what are some of my wants that are going to make it easier but are not necessarily deal breakers. From there, we can sit down and determine, okay, what types of waivers are you going to need to achieve that operation? Construction business is a perfect example. Can you theoretically fly a construction site without flying over people? Theoretically, you'd have to fly it on a Saturday when nobody's there. That's a need because it really inhibits the efficiency of your drone program if you have to wait till everybody's gone to do your drone flights. Have those conversations, right? And from that needs assessment, you'll determine what waivers you need, what training you need, what equipment you need, what your budget should look like. We can build out your concept of operations moving forward, your standard operating procedures, your flight operations manual. We can train your pilot. Now you have a scoped program that you can go off and run with. One of the traps that I see a lot of programs get into and a lot of folks get into is they get what I call the Best Buy effect, right? They go out and they see all the value that a drone can provide. They go out and buy the shiniest drone they can get their hands on without a lot of thought of, okay, how am I going to utilize this? What's the utility of this technology? What's the business case for this? And what program structure do I need in place? And how do I ensure it, right? That's one of the big questions that we get asked all the time, right? So to put a cap on this, and I don't want to ramble on too long, but really have an honest conversation with yourself about what you're trying to achieve, what it's going to take you to get there, what your budget needs to look like, what your program needs to look like, and then we can help you implement those pillars of waivers, training, SOPs. SkyWatch can help you with insurance to really get that program built right the first time. Just like building a building, build the foundation. Now that you've got a nice, strong foundation you can run with and scale that program, and it's going to be a lot easier to maintain down the line and protect yourself from liability.
And Brendan, I'm going to back up for a second because I want to give you the opportunity to tell the audience a little bit about DroneUp and what it is DroneUp is doing in the space. You guys have had some made some pretty big strides in recent months and over the past couple of years. So why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about DroneUp and what you guys are doing?
Sure. So DroneUp is a full service drone service provider. We provide end-to-end solutions for companies that are implementing drone programs or trying to leverage the efficiency and the benefits that drones can provide. So we do everything from what some folks might be familiar with us for doing, which is the flight services aspect. We also do all the program building and program management, drone program development services as well. So before DroneUp, I ran a company called AeroVista Drone Academy, where we did a lot of the program building support, provided a lot of the training and the consulting services to help folks implement scalable, successful, and sustainable drone programs that provide an ROI to their business. DroneUp acquired us back on April the 1st, and we're really excited to be a part of the full end-to-end solution. So we do everything from in regard to waivers, helping develop the waivers for our clients, working with the FAA to get those waivers approved on behalf of our clients, and then providing our clients the training that they need to comply with the waivers that they're issued. What a lot of folks that come to us don't quite realize when they start going down the waiver process is a waiver is not just a piece of paper that says, congratulations, you can fly over people. It's like a contract between you and the FAA. The FAA is allowing you beyond a certain regulation, but you've got to fulfill your end of the bargain. And generally speaking, a lot of that is based around training and operating procedures specific to what you're doing, what mitigations you're using, whether it be an airframe parachute for overflight of people, or whether it be the night physiology, night operations training that the FAA requires, but is not taught to drone pilots because they don't expect drone pilots to need to fly at night. So we can provide all of those services or parts of those services depending on what the client needs to be successful.
Thanks, Brendan. Brandon Packman is the head of business development with SkyWatch.AI. Brandon, tell us a little bit about SkyWatch and what it is you guys do. Obviously, insurance is a critical component of any reputable drone implementation program or any program that's implemented drones. But also, I'll also pose the same question to you after you tell us a little bit about SkyWatch. What advice would you have for an end user or prospective end user not yet using drones, but who's considering implementing a program but doesn't know where to start?
Yeah, thanks, Grant. Appreciate the opportunity as well. Yeah, so SkyWatch, we are a really flexible insurance solution that's tailored to the use of drones, specifically under 55 pounds. Part 107 rule is what we're talking about here. We offer hourly, monthly, and annual policies, and we're a little different in that safer pilots end up paying less whether they either don't have a claim with us over time. They're going to end up saving about 25% off, or you can even send us in flight logs and we look at the telemetry data and we score that with a little machine learning algorithm that our founders created, and then reward safer pilots with a safety score that translates into discounts. So we really want to kind of get into the nitty gritty of people, flying drones. Are they doing it safely, their behavior? And that translates into the risk of an operation, kind of what we're talking about now, best practices, SOPs, what have you. We talked about, needs assessment. I think I fit in more on the risk assessment. I can talk about the needs assessment too, because, it's an interesting topic, but you really want to go consult those best practices. When you are looking about starting a business, you got to look about your operational and cost. Insurance is one of those necessary evils that are out there in all lines of business. And you're going to want to find out what the cost is while you're doing the business plan, or revisit that cost and shop it and find the best rate that fits you. When you go out there, you find an insurance agent. By the way, you can purchase SkyWatch through many insurance agents out there. You want to come and say, here's how we run our business, here's our SOPs, here's our best practices. You want to put your best foot forward when you're looking for insurance, and you're going to find yourself to get, maybe some better rates and a better relationship with your agent and underwriter. You're going to want to establish that, even if the rates, don't change drastically by like 50, 100%, type stuff. If you ever come into a situation where you need that insurance policy instead of just paying for it, having that really good relationship and looking like a professional organization goes a long way in maintaining good relationships with your underwriter and the agent. When you expand your operations and you're looking for these nighttime waivers, and you're looking to get increased, more liberal coverage, those relationships matter, and the reputation that you have in the industry as a whole, and especially in the insurance community as a risk, they really do matter.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate it. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to Trent Nichols. He's the VP National BIM Director with J.E. Dunn Construction. Trent, of course, I'm going to pose the same question to you. What can someone who's looking to implement a drone program, particularly in the construction industry perhaps, what steps do they need to take? What are the first things they need to know if they are starting with a blank slate and they don't know what to do? But before we get there, tell us a little bit about J.E. Dunn.
Yeah, so J.E. Dunn is a large general contractor, national contractor. We have 22 offices spread across pretty much the entire United States. Always focused on vertical construction. We're not doing any infrastructure work, no roads, highways, bridges, that type of stuff. So everything is tight site, vertical construction. We started our initiative on establishing a drone program about 2 years ago. And to Brendan Stewart's comments about assessing our needs were quite different than what one might expect. We weren't necessarily looking at a return on investment strategy. We were looking at how do we get control of the Best Buy effect, where project teams were going out and just buying drones and flying all over our projects and increasing our risk. So our need was risk management, our need was safety, and our need was to be able to have visibility and control over drones. When you think of a new technology that is, fairly simple technology, so to speak, at least in some people's eyes, but yet highly regulated. It's not like it's a piece of software. So there's a lot of risk associated with flying drones on project sites. So we really had two goals. Number one is, like most construction companies, number one priority is safety. So the safety of our people and the safety of the people walking in and on and off our job sites every single day, as well as the public around our job sites. We're usually in urban areas, vertical construction, densely populated. So safety was number one. Risk management was number two, and compliance, making sure that we were doing things right. So, you know, I was not a drone enthusiast. I wouldn't call myself a drone enthusiast. So one recommendation that I would say is pick somebody within your organization that has the ability or wants to ensure that you're doing things correctly and not just flying drones for the sake of flying drones. And I would make those individuals, whoever they are, make a team, right? It was me, not a drone enthusiast. You see my title, it's National BIM Director. I'm focused on 3D technology, not drones. I know they kind of overlap, but my main role is not drones. I partnered with our risk management team. I have partnered with our legal team, and that's where we started. And then from there, I would say the key things is, one, educate yourself. You know, I went and got my Part 107 certification for nothing more than understanding what the requirements were, what's the regulations. I would also do your research. I don't think it takes much to figure out through the internet. There are tons and tons of startup or technology companies related to drones. They do different things, whether they're fleet management or data processing or insurance or whatever, but do your research and leverage those experts to help you learn about what has to happen or what is required to set up a successful drone program within your organization. And then insurance, right? Insurance is important. You know, in our example, you know, making sure that if you don't follow drone regulations to a T, is your insurance provider going to cover you in the case that there's an incident or an accident? So you need to know what's right and what's wrong and capable from an insurance perspective. And then the last thing I would say is walk before you run. I mean, we're not looking to see how fast we can get as many drones as we possibly can in our fleet and deployed on our projects. We're figuring out how do we get our program set up, rolled out, control it, and then scale it at the right size, at the right pace, at the right time to ensure that we're doing things compliant, risk-free, and keeping safety front of mind.
Thanks, Trent. I think you hit on something really important. You had mentioned how you weren't necessarily a drone enthusiast. This industry is still so new, and there are a lot of companies out there that, you know, people who have approached me in various end user industries who said, we're kind of scared, we're terrified, we want to get our feet wet, but we don't even really know what drones are. We just know they are saving, they're cutting costs, they're reducing risk, and they're streamlining operations, but we're not a tech savvy person, or, you know, and so I think it's important for new businesses to realize this is a newer industry, still newer technology. And I mean, you know, Brandon, how long, I know you've been doing drone insurance for a while, but how long has drone insurance even been a thing? Maybe a decade?
Yeah, that's a good ballpark, a decade, Grant. It really started to blossom, you know, around 2014, 15. Even in the shaky, is this legal, is it not? Does the FAA have the ability to, you know, regulate and whatnot? I started in 2013 focusing on drone insurance and seeing, you know, a pretty rapid rise of new players being out there, and a lot of good options, and competition and options are good for the marketplace. So it's exciting to see the evolution, you know, to help support the industry.
Absolutely. And there's, you know, typically when we talk about the drone industry, if there's one date that sticks in people's mind, it's 2017, which Part 107, of course, came into effect. It was in 2016, came into effect 2017. And Brendan brought up how getting a 3 through 3 exemption was a more arduous process. It was more time consuming, expensive than it is getting a Part 107 waiver. But even in 2017 and 2018, I still saw companies stressing out and being concerned with how to go about getting a 107 waiver. Are they ever really granted? I mean, I remember back in 2017, getting a BVLOS waiver was almost unheard of. Some companies had done it, but now I want to say there's maybe 50 or so that have been granted, maybe more, but there's even more BVLOS waivers now. And so this brings me to my next talking point, our next question, and it's kind of the demystification of the waiver process and assuring companies that are wanting to implement drone technology they are capable of obtaining a 107 waiver. There's companies, like DroneUp who can help them do so, and there are ways to go about doing this that necessarily weren't always there, such as drone zones, a pretty effective way to obtain a 107 waiver. But this at the beginning of the program, until these significant regulatory advancements are coming to effect, such as remote identification or the easing of restrictions over people and at night, in order to really scale a program, these Part 107 waivers are critical. And even once those regulations I just discussed come into play, there's going to be a delay period. So maximizing Part 107 waivers is going to continue to be critical in order to succeed in this industry. Trent, what guidance would you give to companies that are hesitant to even get into this space to start using drones because they're concerned about having to go through the process of obtaining these waivers?
Yeah, so, and I missed this on the first question, and I think this applies. Number one, use your experts, right? We got both waivers, 10729 and 10739, with the help of Brendan Stewart. We don't know that space, so we went ahead and used our expertise and allowed us to get it pretty quickly. What I would say is it's absolutely required to mitigate your risk. What I know is we also allow third-party vendors to also fly on our site as long as they meet our minimum standards for aviation liability insurance and meet our drone protocol standards. But when you talk to those third-party providers, their purpose and their reason for doing it is different than ours. Ours is safety and compliance. Theirs is to do more work. And what we found is most of them are not compliant. They don't have the waivers, or they're not following the rules, or they interpret the laws the way they want to interpret it to make their business more successful. And at the end of the day, you can interpret the rules and the regulations however you want, but the FAA is going to be the judge and the jury. So you don't want to leave it up to somebody who thinks they has a better understanding of what's possible when it comes to flying over people, and leave it up to them. If there's an accident or an incident, at the end of the day, yeah, they're responsible because they're the remote pilot in command. But what I can tell you from a vertical construction perspective is that our name is all over the fence. And so when it gets put in the news, it's going to be J.E. Dunn had a drone incident, not a third-party service provider who was on our job site. So I would say that if you're going to do it right, and you're going to have compliance and you're going to mitigate your risk, then it's not an option. And I wouldn't just trust that the people that are out there selling services have it all figured out.
Trent, you raised a good point, and to the extent that, if I can take a second and give a little advice, it's almost like cold calling's never the best policy in pretty much any arena. But when you're talking about a major waiver, a Part 107 waiver, it is critical to work with experts, with people who not only understand the technology and the regulatory restrictions, but who also have the relationships with the regulatory officials who can help guide them through the process. One thing I always tell clients, you do not want the FAA to find out about something you are doing for the industry from CNN or Fox or NBC. You don't. It's never a good thing. Right. The FAA is very supportive about moving this industry forward, and the way you do that is you really build that relationship with them. And I just think that's critical. And that kind of comes from working with an expert, someone who does understand the waiver process, the technology. And so if I'm adding my own 2 cents in there, I would say I back Trent 100% on that. retaining experts over areas in which you are not familiar is critical to efficiently being able to maximize a Part 107 waiver and to further your drone program to advance it in any possible way, really. Brent, I'll ask you the same question. In terms of companies that are gun shy, that are little overwhelmed by what they're seeing with drones and all the great things drones can do, but they don't know where to start. We addressed that in the first question, but they know about these 107 waivers. Even people who really aren't drone savvy, they hear 107, they know it has something to do with drones. Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give to companies who are on the fence about implementing a program, but they're concerned about that 107 waiver aspect of it?
Absolutely. So to back up, what you said, Grant, and also Trent, to your point is, utilize the expertise and the experts that are available out there in the industry. I mean, a lot of folks that are getting into the drone industry, a lot of companies that are standardizing drone operations or just beginning their drone operations. You don't come into the environment as an aviation expert, as a drone expert, and it can be very intimidating, right? I remember when I learned to fly a manned aircraft and I had to learn a stack of regulations in a book 2.5 inches thick. It was a very overwhelming experience, and for a lot of people, they get intimidated. One of the reactions to that I see, and one thing that I want to put out there is that there seems to be this tendency, at least in some areas of the market, to ask the question about how can I operate without needing a waiver instead of how do I get the waiver to be legal, right? One of the things that I hear about overflight of people, and Grant, I'm sure you're familiar, there's a lot of amateur attorneys out there on the internet that'll say things like, well, a participating person—
I wouldn't call them attorneys even. They're people giving advice every second of the day as we sit here on LinkedIn, are not lawyers, have not gone to law school, but that's a whole nother issue. I don't mean to get on my soapbox, but go ahead.
No, not at all. And I'll preface this by saying I'm not an attorney and none of this should be construed as legal advice, but there are folks out there that'll say things like a participating person is anybody that works for the company. So you can fly over any contractor on your job site. You can fly over, anybody that's working for you, even if they're totally tangentially related to the drone operation. And the FAA has clarified in Advisory Circular 107-2 and in other places that that's not how they see it. But the real thing is, don't look at waivers just as a risk mitigation tool, right? Don't look at waivers just as a way to not get sued and just as a way to not get an enforcement action by the FAA. But what waivers require you to do is waivers require you to demonstrate a tangible plan to make sure that those operations are safe, right? So if you're doing something that's reasonably safe, if you're flying over people, but you're using a ballistic airframe parachute that's certified by the ASTM standard and it can perform as expected, if the pilots that you're flying with are trained on the operation of that parachute system, you're using a checklist, an operational risk management procedure to hold flight crews accountable while they're doing that. It's not impossible to approve waivers like that. It's not even that difficult to approve waivers like that because the FAA sees that once you're doing something responsible, you're using equipment that's proven to be safe, your focus is towards safety and making your operations safe and responsible as you scale them, instead of trying to find a way to interpret your way around needing that waiver. The process is actually pretty collaborative. Even in the waivers that I've had, friction about, the FAA has always came back and asked questions and said, okay, this is great. We like this, this, and this. We have questions about this piece, and this piece, right? And if you're partnered with an expert, somebody who's familiar with the regulations, somebody who's familiar with the technology and familiar with the industry, it's not getting these waivers approved is not a Herculean task, right? It's not something that's going to take your business years and years and years to get approved. One of the things that I recommend is, even with remote ID coming forward, right? And even with the changes with the, overflight of people and night operations by rule with a demonstrated means of compliance that's supposed to happen at the end of the year. The example that I give people that ask that question of, should I just wait? The FAA was directed by Congress to create Part 107 back in 2012, and it took until 2017 for that to come out in a usable form, right? So absolutely, the regulations are going to change. You can wait, but it's not impossible today. We can make steps today, and those steps are not only going to keep you compliant, but they're going to keep you tangibly safe. And at the end of the day, that's really the piece that matters, is keeping people tangibly safe, mitigating your risk on the back end, and being able to scale your operations effectively. And if you have concerns, reach out to an expert, ask those questions, reach out to an attorney if you need a legal interpretation of what you can and can't do. Don't just assume that those posts on LinkedIn are gospel, right, or legally enforceable. So, you know, at the end of the day, I think you guys nailed it. Do your research, partner with experts, and then go forward with a safety plan instead of a how do I avoid this regulation entirely plan, because that's really what waivers are about at the end of the day. They're about safety. They're not just about overriding a regulation.
And Brendan, one thing I'll add to that is people have this conception that the FAA is coming from a place of no, that they want to stand in the place of everything that innovative companies are trying to do. That's actually not accurate.
Absolutely.
To the fact that the FAA is congressionally mandated to oversee and facilitate the efficient and rapid integration of UAS into national airspace, they, you know, from my experiences working with the FAA and helping clients partner with the FAA to move this industry forward, the FAA wants to see companies succeed. They want to see companies perform the most advanced operations possible, even under Part 107. It's a misconception that there are some things you just, I mean, there are things you cannot do under Part 107, but there's a lot more you can do under Part 107 than the average person thinks. And the FAA is fully in support of companies that are wanting to innovate, especially companies that do show their concern with safety. And this actually kind of leads me into Brandon. You know, insurance is a huge component of all this, and being sure that that these companies are able to leverage that risk and know that there is, well, for lack of a better word, they're insured. They are in a place where if something does go wrong, there's already liability protection in place, just like there is with any other form of transportation, or not even transportation, any other modem. So without further ado, Brandon, you know, same question posed to you in terms of Part 107 waivers and companies that are hesitant to implement this technology for that reason.
Yeah. So the first thing you got to go do is, you know, go look at your risk management, you know, your insurance package that you have now. If you don't have an aviation specific policy, most likely drone use is excluded as they're, you know, classified as aircraft. That's the favorite first thing that all general liability policies exclude, aircraft. So you need to have an aircraft specific policy and make sure it doesn't exclude drones within it. So make sure you have that aviation liability in place to begin with. And then when you're, you know, if you don't and you're selecting a new one, you want to have a policy that can grow with the program or be aware of its limitations. So within our policy, if you obtain these waivers and you're still, you know, acting under, you know, the FAA, you know, guidance and rules around that, you don't have to amend the insurance policy with us and many out there that as long as you have waivers, your insurance policy still applies to like flight over people. If you have this type of waiver, be lost. It's liberal in that it kind of grows with you. But first thing you want to do is make sure you aren't just relying on a general liability policy. Say, well, I have business insurance. It's 99% of the time it's excluded on those policies and has to be written back in specifically. But go, if you have an insurance agent, make sure, you know, they're earning their commission there. They have E&O insurance, errors and omissions. They need to give their professional guidance on whether your business use of drones is covered by current policy or recommend the correct product and policies that cover you. And that's really the job of an agent, which I'm the agent at SkyWatch. So if you got more questions after that, you know, give us a ring. I'm the guy who picks up the phone and happy to walk through the solution to the work for you.
Thanks, Brandon. I want to move on now and talk about two very specific waivers. When you're talking about construction projects and endeavors in other end user industries, of course, industry-wide, BV loss is the regulation you hear about the most. And to that end, we do have the final remote identification rule that hopefully will be coming out by the end of the year. We are not certain right now what the implementation period will be, but there are some other restrictions that really play heavily into, are you able to scale a drone program? Because not being able to operate at night or over people are also two very, they can be pretty devastating regulatory roadblocks to a drone program. Luckily, these are two waivable regulations. Part 107.29 waiver is a waiver to achieve, be able to operate during nighttime. And a Part 107.39 waiver is a waiver to be able to operate over people. Both of these are, again, critical to scaling operations. I should add, they're also the subject of another proposed rule that hopefully will be coming out by the end of the year, where we will see easing of those requirements and maybe a future where waivers won't be needed for certain types of activities that take place at night or over people. Again, the timeline of implementation, everything's a mystery until that final rule comes out. So with that, Brandon, let's start with you because I want to talk about risk mitigation. How do these types of waivers, the over people waiver and the at night waiver, how does that help mitigate risk in a drone program?
Yeah, so I think, the process, forces you to get those SOPs, best practices, and it seems like there's a framework out there that is kind of the accepted, ABC approach to the process. From the insurance perspective, that's great. We want to see when you're going and getting any type of insurance, they want to see that you're acting professionally, you know what you're doing. So I think that going through the process is an important, point, and I'm glad that that exists out there. Am I insured? Am I not? I think I'd go back to the, can look at your policy, consult with your agent, make sure that you're sharing with them the procedures and make sure they check that back, that it's working with the policy that you have in place. It probably should, but risk mitigation, you don't want to assume anything, the old acronym with assume. So it's a good thing to loop your insurance people into this process, as again, drones are excluded on most insurance because of the classification of aircraft. So you just want to make sure there's no gaps on the old insurance program that you have in place.
Thanks, Brandon. Trent, I'm going to pose the same question to you. Obviously, you mentioned Dunn's a huge construction company. The ability to scale this technology is critical. If you didn't have these waivers, you would be looking at people having your crew having to operate at night. Of course, that right there is a pretty substantial problem. So how critical are these waivers and maximizing what you can do under these waivers? How critical is that to the success of a drone program?
It's absolutely the key to success. I mean, we have our waivers, right? But we have not finished all of our training under the provisions of the waiver. And we don't have pilots with enough time to fly. They don't have enough stick time logged underneath the provision of those waivers. So we're really, as far as what we can do right now, we're hamstrung, right? We're doing drone videos and photos, and we're doing them on Saturdays, or we're doing them after hours. But that has limited value. It doesn't change the way we execute work, and that's really what's important for Dunn. It's not, if we can do fancy videos and fancy photos, that's great, but we need to impact the business, the core business. So it's absolutely critical. It's for not only to allow us to do it, but from a risk management perspective, we know within our insurance binder and our policy, there's a statement in there that says something along the lines of, you can fly drones on your job sites as long as you meet all of the regulations. If not, you're not covered. So, we can't take the chance of having an incident and causing damage and getting into a claim, or we're not going to be covered. So it's critical for that reason as well. And then in addition, I think that the waivers, number one, it increases our level of understanding and knowledge around drone technology and industry, so we can plan better on how we execute drones on our flight. We can question third-party providers intelligently and understand their level of knowledge when it comes to flying drones on our job sites. And it also allows us to control it. If we don't have this knowledge and we don't understand all of these provisions and all these regulations, then what happens is you're back to where you're buying drones at Best Buy on company credit cards, and they're out there flying illegally, and you're putting the company at risk. So it's full circle: exposure, knowledge, risk management, risk mitigation, insurance compliance, all the different stuff. So it's absolutely critical for us to do it successfully.
So at J. Dunn, how would a company like J. Dunn go about determining who the expert is who can help usher in drone technology? Someone who actually can provide the company with advice. Basically, how did J. Dunn go about determining who the correct drone advisor was for them?
Well, there was no strategy behind it. They just said, Trent, figure it out, right? And so I really dug in. I went to a conference. I knew nothing. I went to a UAV conference, and it was overwhelming because there was all of these tech providers, and it wasn't about buying drone software or hardware. I needed to know what was right. So going to that conference, opened my eyes to really to the importance of me understanding every in and out. So I started doing my homework. Who are the people that do fleet management? Who are the software providers for data processing and all the different things that you can do with drone data? Who are the experts when it comes to the FAA regulation? And I just methodically went through and did my homework and did my research, and I picked the ones that I thought were best. And I really leaned on them hard to help us write our protocol, look at our operational policy within J. Dunn for aerial services, develop our internal documentation, evaluate our insurance, write our waivers, get those waivers approved, train us. When we first got started, I was told that it was going to take 4 days to do practical training on our pilots that were certified to understand how to fly a drone correctly. I thought they were absolutely crazy. But once we brought those experts in, they exposed us to more than just flying drones. They gave us input and insights across the board about aviation and drones and how to do it correctly, and it was extremely valuable. So by the time we got done with all of that and got to the waivers, like I said, I knew nothing about drones. I didn't really care to know anything about drones, and because of that, and the fact that I was held responsible just to make sure that we were doing it compliant, safely, and making sure we were mitigating our risk, leveraging our experts, I think we're in a really good place to scale it now that we've got all those things in place. But it wasn't. I would just pick somebody that you can count on, that has enough authority and passion to do things correctly for the business, not just for the fact of flying drones.
Now, let me ask you, Trent, which conference were you speaking of?
I went to the UAV conference it was in Las Vegas.
Right. So you went there, what, 2018?
Probably 2018. Yeah.
So literally you have the same exact story that I do. I had to say that it's uncanny. I knew no one when I went to that conference. I had one client there who introduced me to the drone industry a few months before, but I took the exact same strategy as you. Literally went there in 2018, met some great people, just started learning the industry. So, pretty uncanny. I just had to say that. I miss that we'll not be in Vegas, of course, this year. Yeah. But look forward to being back next year. But well, no, that's great. And the good thing about conferences like the Commercial UAV Expo and Interdrone and AUVSI Exponential, you kind of get to see everyone, a whole lot of them, experts and great companies on one stage. And so you kind of are able to talk with various groups, from whether it be software creators and providers, operators, counter drone companies, the list goes on. And it's really neat to meet everyone in this industry and Brandon, that kind of takes me, I want to go back to you for a second, because insurance unfortunately tends to be something that people think about after the fact. When I say after the fact, I mean they know they want to implement a program. They know there's going to be legal costs involved. They know they're going to have a whole bunch of paperwork and things to do. But for some reason, the concept of drone insurance still is something that seems kind of elusive to them, or, you know, the fact that there actually are drone insurance companies. What are you guys doing to draw attention to the drone insurance market and show that this is a sub niche within the niche of the drone industry that is very much going to grow, is necessary, and that you guys are ready to service?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. You know, we've tried to partner with, you know, good folks out there. They're reputable. You know, marketing channels and partnerships are important. You know, we've worked with DroneUp also on helping their operators make sure they're insured. You know, they're educating folks on what you need. Often, like you said, Grant, we get people that are coming to us, you know, small drone service providers that they can't do a job now because a client is requiring to be named on a certificate of insurance, and either they don't have drone insurance or their current agent, you know, can't add them as an additional insured quick enough. And a lot of folks in kind of the videography, you know, service providers are really kind of last minute folks. So we try and create a platform where they can go on there, add additional insured or purchase insurance without even talking to anybody. It's about a 3-minute process. We're trying to, you know, just kind of educate the folks that are out there that, you know, insurance doesn't have to be hard. You can come and get a quote with us and other folks, you know, pretty quickly on our website. You don't even have to fill out info. So you can get a ballpark estimate of what you need to comply. If you need a 2 million, 5 million, 1 million, you know, type limit of liability, you can go factor that in when you're looking at, you know, your business costs out there. You know, there's a lot of good partners we've made to help spread awareness of drone insurance and us specifically. And I think, you know, I think the last thing I'll say is we've been lucky because of the flexibility out there. We've had really good word of mouth. And I think, you know, in all of our businesses, word of mouth and having a good, you know, customer experience is really important. You know, from the purchase to the claim process with us. So that word of mouth, I think I'm really grateful for our experience from the drone community specifically.
There certainly are a lot of partnership opportunities out there, and that's kind of what's great. One of my friends, Ken Stewart with Arrows, has a great name for it, and I forget what it's like it's a combination of competitors and collaborators, because right now the industry is still so new, where even competitors are helping one another to move this industry forward. Because until we are able to clear these regulatory roadblocks and improve public perception and acceptance of drones, you know, no one is going to maximize scalability as much as they could if we're stronger together, not to sound cliche. But you know, it's definitely an instance right now where there are a lot of great partnership opportunities out there. And I'll say there's a lot of really great people in this industry too. So, you know, it's for those companies out there who are hesitant about starting a program, reach out to any of these three guys, reach out to me. There's a lot of people who want to help. They want to help companies succeed in this industry because they want the industry to succeed, because it's going to benefit them as well. Before I move on to Q&A, Brendan, I did want to give you a chance to answer the question about over people waivers and nighttime waivers, about how critical those are to scalability of operations.
Sure. So they're absolutely critical, and they're critical to risk management as well. And I think the one thing that I can put a finger on that drives that and also drives risk management is something that we talk about in the aviation space all the time, which is safety culture. And it's one of the reasons that I really love working with companies in the architecture, engineering, and construction space, because Trent and you and your team at JE Dunn, you guys get it. You understand the safety, you understand the risk management, and everybody comes to the table with this understanding that, hey, if we're going to build this program, it's got to be safe, it's got to be compliant, we're not cutting any corners, we're not sidestepping, and that's absolutely what the FAA expects when we make a submission and when we give a con ops to the FAA. Here's what we're trying to do, here's how we're going to keep it safe. That culture of safety and that willingness to be above board and say whatever it takes to get it done, we're going to do it. That's the critical component to risk management, right? The waivers are really a function of that culture and of that perspective of how you look at your drone programs. And another thing that I want to put a finger on too, and we talked about this a little bit, is on the insurance side. A lot of people come to me and ask the question of, what do I need to do to not get an FAA enforcement action? Say, well, that's a component of it, but your real question should be, what should I do to keep my program safe and insured and low risk, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're worried about. How do we scale our operations safely? If we're going to scale our operations safely, we need to implement these procedures. If we want to fly over people, look at that. 7 out of the 10 procedures we need to fly over people, we've already got from our standard operating procedures, from our training procedures, from our operational risk management procedures, right? And it's easier to go down that road in the future once you set that foundation up correctly. So absolutely critical to scale your program. And my recommendation is, when you sit down and have that needs assessment, think about what you're trying to do as you build your program, come into it with that culture of safety, come into it with that mind toward risk management. Say, look, whatever it takes to be safe and compliant, we're going to do it. We're not thinking about cutting corners. We're not sidestepping, because not only is it going to protect you from follow-on risk down the line, but it's going to help you be a lot more successful up front. It's going to help you be a lot more scalable up front when you go in with that mindset.
I completely agree. And, one of the great things about this program is, and I think the three of you have all hit the nail on the head, it's really important to think about all these issues before you jump into it. As tempting as it is to just, say, all right, let's go out and buy a bunch of drones. Someone brought up Best Buy and going out and buying drones at Best Buy. It's really important to cross your T's and dot your I's and make sure you are working with experts and people who can help you achieve the greatest ROI, because there are a lot of opportunities out there for people to get this right, and there are a lot of opportunities out there for people to get this wrong. And so, thanks to you, the three of you, for being here today and discussing these issues. Before we conclude, we do have some time for Q&A, and I actually have one that is for Trent. Trent, what would JE Dunn do differently in beginning their drone program? Are there any opportunities to steer clear of, are there any opportunities to steer clear of during the research stage and during the early implementation stage?
I don't know that we would do a whole lot different. We went into it not knowing anything, but I think the time that we invested in figuring out and doing it right was well worth it. We didn't get going as fast. For some people, we can't get drones on the projects fast enough, but we're in a good position to do it right now. So I don't know that we would change anything about that. As far as opportunities on the research side, if I understand the question right, what to watch out for. And I don't know that there's anything there other than really do your homework. I understand, first of all, for us, I needed something to manage the fleet of drones, make sure that they were registered, make sure I knew where they were flying, all that stuff. So that was a key piece to our success. So that was the one thing that I would say. There's several out there. You can look them up. You can do your own homework and figure out which ones align best with your business needs. And then picking the right solution for as far as how you're going to fly the drones and capture the data, and how does that tie to whatever business need that you have or whatever outcome you're trying to achieve. There's tons of great companies out there. I'm not going to sit here and recommend one over the other, but find one that aligns with what you're trying to accomplish, and do your homework, engage with those people, talk to people, and pick the one that works best for you.
Thanks, Trent. And I think, and kind of piggybacking off of that, there are a lot of people who hold themselves out as either experts or, for lack of a better word, there are people who hold themselves out in this industry as having all the answers. No one in this industry has all the answers. The industry is still too volatile and too new for anyone to truly be just a 100% expert. You have people who are constantly attuned to the industry and how it's changing, how the regulatory environment's changing, who assist people with kind of moving through the turbulent times, because in any new industry, you're going to have regulatory, you're going to have volatile regulatory issues, and that's just the nature of it. It always will be. Maximizing Part 107 waivers goes a long way in helping give drone operators peace of mind, because you know that there is a path to be able to do some critical operations, even though on its face is something that without a waiver is against the law. We're almost out of time, but I do want to give each of the three of you a chance to say some closing words. Brandon, let's start with you. First of all, thank you for participating today. It's great. I enjoy keeping up with SkyWatch and seeing all the things you guys are doing. Again, insurance is a major component of any serious business organization and industry. And I think the drone industry market's only going to grow as the drone industry grows.
Yeah, definitely. It's a function of, every business needs insurance, and as there's more businesses involved in the industry, the insurance industry will be there to support it. And it's been fun, for myself and SkyWatch to see the industry grow and adapt with what the business needs are, of the industry. There's all sorts of different risks out there in the drone industry, and it's fun to be kind of the guys thinking about it on the back end of how we're going to insure this, from stuff, that's very simple to stuff that's very complicated. It's going to be an exciting spot to be in the industry for sure.
Absolutely. Trent, same to you. Thank you for being here. Obviously, Jay Dunn doesn't really need an introduction. You guys obviously have been successful in the construction industry for a while now, but it's great to see you guys using drones, and to know that drones they're going to increasingly become a key component of you guys' business platform.
Sure. Yeah. No. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm by no means an expert in the industry, but these things like these are opportunities to gain more knowledge about how to do this stuff successfully. And we're going to continue to learn and figure out how this does provide value, more so than just superficial, but how do we change the way we execute work in the construction industry in the future. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Trent. Now, Brendan, same to you. Thank you for being here. DroneUp continues to just rocket, for lack of a better term. Every week there's something new coming about all the great things you guys are doing. And, I have to give a shout out to Tom Walker. I know a lot of people in this industry, but Tom he's a doer. He makes things happen. And I think in any new industry, you have to have people like that. And those are the people that are going to succeed, because, their minds don't slow down. They don't stop. They keep going. And congratulations to you for being a part of the DroneUp team, but also for all the great work you are doing as well. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Grant, and really appreciate the opportunity. I've enjoyed the time to chat with you guys about waivers and about the industry, and I'm looking forward to many more. And Grant, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. If there's one a trait that's going to make you successful in building a drone program, and we see this in all aspects of the drone program, not just the waiver piece, but I'll focus on the waiver piece. And Tom very much has it, is don't ask the question of, is this possible? Don't ask the question of, can I do this? Ask the question of, what's it going to take, right? And if you go into building your drone program, and if you go into the waiver process, asking yourself the question of, what's it going to take to be safe? What am I going to need to implement? What am I going to need to demonstrate? And what am I going to need to maintain to be able to scale? You're setting yourself up for success in a way that is, indescribably effective, for lack of a better word. So appreciate the opportunity to be here. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And for those of you who are watching, please feel free to reach out to any of the four of us. Our contact information is likely available either on the registration link, or you can find us on LinkedIn or via our company websites. We want to thank you for joining us today to discuss maximization of Part 107 waivers and increasing and maximizing the scalability of a drone program. If you're at all on the fence of implementing a drone program, give one of these three guys a call. And you know, it's an exciting time in this industry, and it's going to connect to so many other industries in America and worldwide. Drone use is increasing daily, and so it's an exciting time to be a part of it. And I think we're only going to see more of it for many years to come. So thanks again for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your week.